I think of you like a vacation, something fun before I get serious again, I said, twirling my wine glass between my fingers, not even looking at him when I said it, the words slipping out in that lazy, half-drunk way you talk when you think you're just being charming. He didn't answer at first, just stared at me across the table with this look I couldn't read, like he was trying to figure out if he'd heard me right or if he should just laugh it off like I expected him to. We were in that tiny, crowded bar down the street from my apartment, the one with the peeling red leather booths and the cheap margaritas, a place that always smelled like a mix of stale beer and regret, and for a few seconds it felt like even the air between us stopped moving, like everything in that whole stupid room froze just to hear how he would respond. I laughed it off too quickly, a high, nervous sound that bounced off the sticky wooden walls, and said, "You know I'm kidding, right?" But by then I already knew I wasn't, not really, and I think he knew it too. "I'm just a vacation," he said finally, his voice low, careful like he was stepping over broken glass, and for some reason that only made me bristle because it wasn't supposed to be this serious. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. I shrugged, reached for my drink, and said, "Come on, Adam. Don't be so dramatic. We're just having fun, aren't we?" I didn't look up when I said it because I was scared to see the way he would look at me, scared it would be too much, or worse, not enough. For a few long minutes, he didn't say a word, just sat there staring at his untouched beer, one hand clenching and unclenching around the bottle like he was trying to squeeze the hurt out of himself without making a scene. I hated the silence more than anything because it made me feel exposed, made me feel like I'd shown my hand too early in a game I wasn't even sure I wanted to be playing. Finally, he stood up without a word, tossing a few crumpled bills on the table, and when he walked out, he didn't even look back, didn't say my name, didn't ask me to follow. I sat there for a moment longer, pretending it didn't bother me, pretending I hadn't just cracked something between us that I would never be able to fix, swirling the last of my drink in my glass like if I stared at it hard enough, I could pretend the night hadn't gone wrong. When I finally left the bar, the night air hit me harder than I expected, cold and sharp, and for a second I thought about running after him, calling his name, telling him I was just being stupid, that I didn't mean it, that he wasn't some throwaway part of my life, that he had somehow wormed his way so deep under my skin that it terrified me. But my feet stayed rooted to the sidewalk like they knew something my heart didn't want to admit yet. I fumbled with my phone, half drunk and half crying, typing out a message I didn't even send. "Come back."
I'm sorry.
I didn't mean it. Instead, I just deleted it, shoved the phone back into my pocket, and told myself it was better this way, cleaner, easier. He deserved someone who knew what the hell they wanted, not someone like me, someone who said cruel things just to see if they could still make someone flinch, someone who was too much of a coward to admit they were already halfway in love. The worst part was, even then, standing there on that cracked sidewalk under a flickering street lamp, I knew this wasn't over, not really. This was just the first domino falling, the first tiny explosion before everything else started unraveling, and I was too stubborn, too scared, too goddamn stupid to stop it. I didn't hear from him the next day, not even a text, not even a passive-aggressive emoji, nothing. By lunchtime, I was pacing my apartment like a caged animal, pretending I wasn't waiting for my phone to buzz, pretending I wasn't checking the time every 5 minutes like some desperate teenager. I thought about messaging him first, maybe pretending like it didn't happen, suggesting we grab dinner or see a movie, but every draft I wrote sounded fake or pathetic, so I just left it, letting the silence stretch until it felt like it was swallowing me whole. When my friend Dana called and asked if I wanted to meet for drinks after work, I said yes immediately, like I had something better to do with my time than sit alone in my living room waiting for someone who clearly didn't want to talk to me. At the bar, I laughed too loudly, drank too much, let Dana introduce me to some guy she knew from her office who was tall and boring and kept looking at my chest while he talked about his crypto investments like he was explaining the secret to eternal youth. I smiled and nodded and let him pay for my drinks because it was easier than thinking about Adam, easier than admitting to Dana that I wasn't really there to have fun, that I was just trying not to fall apart. I don't know what I was hoping for when I checked my phone under the table between laughs, maybe a simple, hey, or even an angry go to hell. Anything that would have proven I still existed in his world, even if it was just as a bad memory. By the time I got home, my head was buzzing and my stomach was churning and all I wanted to do was sleep. But there he was, sitting on the steps of my building like he had been waiting for me for hours. I froze when I saw him, heart hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it, but he didn't move, just looked up at me with that same unreadable expression from the night before. For a second, neither of us said anything, the space between us crackling with all the things we weren't saying. Finally, he stood up, brushing his hands against his jeans like he needed something to do with them, and said, "Can we talk?" I nodded, throat too tight to trust my voice, and unlocked the door with shaking fingers. Inside, I didn't bother offering him a drink or asking if he wanted to sit. I just leaned against the kitchen counter while he stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, like he didn't know if he was supposed to stay or leave. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," I said finally, my voice too loud in the quiet room. "It was just, I don't know, a stupid joke." He didn't react, just kept looking at me with those calm, steady eyes that made me feel like the biggest fraud in the world. "A stupid joke," he repeated, and there was no anger in his voice, which somehow made it worse than if he had screamed. "That's what you think it was?" I pushed off the counter, suddenly angry, suddenly needing to defend myself against something I couldn't even name. "Yeah, Adam, a joke. We've been having fun, haven't we? It's not like we made promises or talked about the future or any of that serious crap. I didn't think you'd take it that personally." He laughed then, short and bitter, and it cut deeper than anything he could have said. "You didn't think I'd take it personally that you called me a temporary thing?" he said, shaking his head. "You didn't think maybe I was serious about you?" The words hit me harder than I wanted them to. I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to protect myself from the way his voice sounded, raw and real, and nothing like the man who used to tease me about my bad taste in wine, or the way I couldn't parallel park to save my life. "I didn't ask you to get serious," I snapped, the words coming out sharper than I intended. "That's not my fault." For a moment, I thought he might yell, finally break that careful, patient shell of his, but he just nodded, like he was finally seeing something he should have seen a long time ago. "You're right," he said, voice low. "You didn't ask. I just thought maybe you felt it too." I wanted to tell him I did, that I was just scared, that I had spent so much time building walls around myself that I didn't know how to let anyone in even when I wanted to, but the words stuck in my throat, too heavy to push past my pride. Instead, I watched him walk to the door, watched him hesitate for just a second like he was giving me one last chance to say something, do something, be someone worth staying for. But I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, frozen, until the door clicked shut behind him. When I finally let myself slide down to the floor, the cheap laminate cold against my bare legs, the only thing I could think was that I hadn't even tried to stop him. I let him go like it didn't matter, like he was just some phase I would get over, like he wasn't the first real thing I had touched in what felt like forever. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel strong or clever or independent. I just felt hollow, like someone had scooped everything out of me and left nothing behind but the echo of my own mistakes. 3 days passed without a word, and I told myself it was for the best because what else could I have done, really, besides make things worse by chasing after him when it was clear he had made up his mind. I went through the motions of my life like a stranger wearing my skin, sitting at my desk pretending to care about quarterly reports and smiling at coworkers like I wasn't thinking about him every second I wasn't talking. Every time my phone buzzed, I grabbed it so fast I almost dropped it, but it was never him, just junk emails or group chats about brunch plans I had no intention of attending. The longer the silence stretched, the easier it was to pretend that he had overreacted, that it wasn't all my fault, that maybe he was just looking for an excuse to leave all along. Dana texted me on the 4th night saying she was worried about me and that we should go out, have some drinks, take my mind off things, and even though every part of me wanted to stay curled up on the couch, I agreed because sitting at home refreshing my texts like an idiot wasn't doing me any favors. She dragged me to this bar downtown that I hated, the kind where everyone was too dressed up and trying too hard, but I put on my best lipstick and my highest heels and forced myself to act like I wasn't falling apart inside. Halfway through the second drink, Dana leaned across the table, her voice low and careful in that way people use when they know they're about to say something you're not going to like. "I saw Adam last night," she said, stirring her cocktail, without looking at me. I sat up straighter, my stomach nodding in a way that made it hard to breathe, but I forced my voice to sound casual. "Oh yeah? Where?" Dana hesitated, biting her lip like she was trying to decide if she should tell me. He was at that new place on 6th, the one with the live music, she said finally. He wasn't alone. I stared at her, willing her to shut up, willing her to take it back. But she kept going. It wasn't anything crazy. They were just sitting close, talking. She was laughing a lot. He looked good. I picked up my drink and downed it in one long gulp, the alcohol burning its way down my throat in a way that felt deserved. Dana reached across the table, covering my hand with hers, but I pulled away like her touch might finish crumbling whatever was left of me. "You don't know what you saw," I said, my voice too sharp, too loud. Maybe it was just a friend. Dana didn't argue. She just looked at me with that sad kind of pity I hated more than anything. I stood up, grabbing my purse, and said, "I'm going home," without waiting for her to answer. The taxi ride back to my apartment was a blur of neon lights and rage building under my skin. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that even if he was out with someone else it was just rebound bullshit, but the truth clawed at the back of my mind, cold and merciless. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash something. Instead, I unlocked my door, kicked off my shoes, and paced my living room like a storm I couldn't control. My phone was still on the table where I had thrown it earlier. I picked it up and without thinking, without planning, I called him. He answered after 2 rings. "Claire," he said, his voice calm like he wasn't the villain in my story. "What do you want? Are you seriously seeing someone already?" I snapped, skipping any kind of greeting, because I didn't trust myself not to break down if I started with anything soft. There was a pause, and for a second I thought he might hang up, but when he spoke, his voice was measured. "It's not your business anymore," he said. "Not my business?" I laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "After everything we've been through?" "You made it clear what I was to you," he said, and for the first time, I could hear the anger under the surface. "You don't get to be mad now that I believe you." "I didn't mean it," I said, the words spilling out too fast, too late. "I was scared, Adam. I was scared of getting hurt, scared of needing someone who could walk away. I didn't mean it." "You didn't mean it when you said it," he said, "but you meant it when you stayed silent after. You meant it when you let me leave." I pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes, willing the tears to stop because I didn't want to cry, didn't want to give him that satisfaction. "I messed up," I whispered. "I know I did. Please, just can we talk? Face to face." Another long pause, another wound opening inside me, and then he said, "I don't think I want to hear more excuses, Claire. I think you need to sit with what you said. I think you need to figure out why you said it at all." "Are you with her?" I asked, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. "I'm not with anyone," he said, and there was something in his voice, something tired and final. "But I'm not with you either." The line went dead before I could say anything else, and I stood there in the middle of my living room, staring at the phone like it might suddenly come back to life if I just wished hard enough. It didn't. Of course it didn't. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I realized that there was no fixing it. Some things you can't take back. Some words stay lodged in the people you hurt like splinters they can't pull out. And this time, it was me who put them there. 2 days after that call, I found out he had blocked me. No warning, no fight, no dramatic text telling me why. I went to send another message, to apologize properly this time, to say all the right things I should have said the night he walked out, but my message bounced back, and the realization hit me harder than anything else had so far. Adam had not just left me. He had erased me. I spent the next few hours convincing myself it was fine, telling myself I deserved it, telling myself that people moved on and I would too, but when night came and my apartment was filled with nothing but the sound of my own breathing, it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like punishment. I scrolled through old photos like some pathetic teenager, seeing his face smiling back at me in every single one, remembering the moments I had wasted being too afraid to believe in something real. The worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was knowing he didn't miss me. It was knowing that when he blocked me, he wasn't trying to hurt me. He just didn't want me in his life anymore. I stewed in that for another full day before I did something that even now I can't believe I was capable of. I went to where he worked. I told myself it was just to see him, just to remind him I existed, that maybe if he saw me again, if he looked into my face and saw how sorry I was, something would soften. Maybe I could fix it, patch it back together, even if it would never be the same. I waited outside the building, pretending to text on my phone, ignoring the looks from the receptionist when I loitered too long in the lobby. Finally, after almost an hour, I saw him walking toward the doors, laughing with a woman I didn't recognize. She was tall, polished in a way I never bothered to be, and the sight of him looking so relaxed beside her hit me like a slap. I stepped out without thinking, without planning, just moving on pure gut instinct. He saw me instantly, and the easy smile dropped from his face like a stone. He said something quick to the woman, something that made her look at me curiously before walking off toward the parking lot. Adam stayed where he was, hands shoved into his pockets like he was holding himself back from saying something he would regret. "What are you doing here, Claire?" His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't anything. It was like I was a stranger he barely remembered. "I needed to see you," I said, my throat dry. "You blocked me." "I blocked you because I don't want to do this anymore," he said, voice steady. "You don't get to show up at my job like this." I just needed to explain," I said, stepping closer even though I could see him flinch, barely, like even being near me hurt. "I didn't mean what I said that night. I was scared. I was stupid. I pushed you away because I didn't know how else to handle it. But I never wanted this." He shook his head slowly, like he didn't recognize the person talking to him. "You didn't just say something stupid, Claire. You made me believe it. You looked me in the eye and let me leave without fighting for me. You don't get to rewrite that now just because you're lonely." "I'm not rewriting anything," I said, voice rising, not caring if people walking past us were staring. "I'm trying to fix it. Doesn't that matter to you at all?" He let out a long breath, and for a second, he almost looked sad. "You don't fix things by breaking them over and over again," he said. "You fix things by taking care of them before they fall apart." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him and shake him and demand he look at me, really look at me, and see that I wasn't the person who had said those things, not anymore. But the truth was I had been.
And he had seen it.
And he wasn't going to forget it just because I had decided it was inconvenient for me to be alone now. "So that's it," I said, voice shaking. "You're just done?" "I was done the minute you decided I wasn't worth being serious about," he said. I just hadn't realized it yet. I watched him walk away without looking back, watched him disappear into the crowd like he had never been mine at all. I stood there for a long time, until the sun started to dip and the streetlights flickered on, until my legs felt numb and my heart felt even worse. Eventually, I turned and went home, each step heavier than the last, each breath tighter in my chest. That night, I opened my laptop and did the one thing I knew would hurt him back, the one thing I swore I would never stoop to. I logged into our shared cloud storage, the one we had forgotten to separate, and I deleted everything that had his name on it. Pictures, videos, shared playlists, documents. Every reminder of the life we had almost built together, gone in a few clicks. It was petty and small and cruel, and it didn't make me feel better. It made me feel worse. But it was the only way I could make him hurt the way he had made me hurt. It didn't matter that he probably had backups. It didn't matter that it was childish and stupid. It was all I had left to do. And afterward, when the anger drained out of me and all that was left was the empty, echoing quiet, I sat alone in the dark and wondered if this was who I had been all along. Someone who destroyed the things she loved because she didn't know how to hold on to them. It took less than a week for the regret to set in so deep I could barely function. I thought deleting those things would make me feel like I had some control over the situation, like I had clawed back some piece of dignity, but instead it only made everything worse. I couldn't even pretend I was the better person anymore. There were no excuses left to hide behind. Adam didn't try to reach out, didn't call to ask why I had done it, didn't even send some cold message demanding an explanation. He just stayed silent, and somehow that silence screamed louder than anything he could have said. I spent my nights staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the ways I could have handled things differently, replaying every moment between us, from the first time he smiled at me to the last time he looked at me like I was a stranger he barely tolerated. One night, About 2 weeks after everything fell apart, Dana called. I ignored it at first, not wanting to hear more advice or pity, but when she called again 5 minutes later, I picked up. Her voice was low and careful, the way people talk when they're about to tell you something you're not going to like. "I thought you should hear it from me," she said. "Adam's seeing someone." I didn't say anything, just closed my eyes and listened as she filled the silence. "It's not serious. Not yet. But he looks happy, Claire. Happier than I've seen him in a long time." I thanked her and hung up before she could say anything else. I sat there for a long time, the phone heavy in my hand, until the quiet of my apartment felt unbearable. I needed to do something, anything to drown out the feeling creeping up my spine. I grabbed my keys and left without knowing where I was going. I ended up driving past Adam's building, the one we used to talk about moving into together when we still believed there would be a future. His car was there, parked neatly in its spot, and for a second I almost pulled over, almost convinced myself that if I just knocked on his door and explained everything perfectly, he would understand and things could go back to the way they used to be. But I didn't stop. I kept driving, past the quiet neighborhoods where we used to walk his dog, past the grocery store where we used to argue about which pasta sauce to buy, past every memory of him that still lived in this town like a ghost I couldn't exorcise. When I finally got back home, the realization hit me so hard it left me breathless. It wasn't just that I had lost Adam. It was that I had destroyed the version of myself that had been good enough for him. I had been cruel, careless, selfish. I had treated love like a game, and when I lost, I acted like the victim. But there were no victims here. There was only me, standing alone in the ruins I had built with my own hands. A few days later, I saw him in the grocery store. It was stupid luck, running into him like that, both of us reaching for a carton of milk at the same time. He looked different, lighter somehow, like someone who had finally put down a weight they didn't realize they had been carrying. He smiled, polite but distant, the kind of smile you give to someone you barely know, and it shattered whatever tiny hope I had still been clinging to. "Hi," I said, my voice too small, too raw. "Hey," he said, stepping back to let me take the milk first. For a moment, we just stood there, the normal sounds of the store moving around us like we were invisible. I opened my mouth to say something, to apologize again, to beg, to explain, but he shook his head slightly before I could get the words out. "I'm doing good, Claire," he said, and I knew it wasn't an invitation to ask about his life. It was a boundary. It was a wall I wasn't allowed to climb anymore. "I'm glad," I said, and I meant it, even though it felt like the words were scraping against something raw inside me. He nodded once and turned away, walking down the aisle without looking back. I stood there, holding that stupid carton of milk, feeling the finality of it settle in my chest like something too heavy to move. Later that night, I sat on my couch scrolling through my phone, deleting old photos and conversations I had clung to for too long. I didn't do it out of anger this time. I did it because holding on to them felt like trying to hold on to a life that didn't exist anymore. I deleted his contact, the playlists he made for me, the notes we used to leave for each other, one by one until there was nothing left. It didn't feel like victory or closure. It just felt necessary. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in the quiet, accepting that this was what happened when you took something good and treated it like it would always be there no matter how badly you handled it. Adam had given me every chance to be better, to love him the way he deserved, and I had thrown it away because I thought I had time, because I thought I could always fix it later. But later never came.